everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk. The international break's almost over. Championship football does resume this Saturday. Norwich City hosting West Bromwich Albion. With that, delighted to welcome Chris back to the channel from Albion Analysis to talk all things West Brom ahead of Saturday's clash. I mean, Norwich kind of scrounging around in the middle of the Championship. West Brom still look well on course for a top six push between now and the end of the season. We're going to find out all of that in the next 20 minutes or so. Chris, let's start with the current state of play. 6th at the moment, 8 games to go. Unbeaten in your last 6, 4 draws in there, but the likes of Burnley and Leeds played in and amongst that. So what's kind of the mood and the feeling around the West Brom camp at the moment heading into these final big games?
Decent, but also a feeling of this 5-game period is kind of where our season gets made or broken, as it were. I mean, we'll come on to you, obviously, but I would imagine you guys are very much considering that you've heard the last orders bell in the last chance saloon this weekend, which obviously makes you a pretty dangerous opponent because I don't normally buy into there being many must-win games with 8 games to go, but I don't think you can call it anything else from a Norwich perspective. I think if you, given that we are the team there to be shot at in 6, I think if you don't take 3 points off us and claw that gap back this weekend and another game slips away, I think realistically you're done as far as your chances of making the playoffs are. And then after that, it's Sunderland at home, obviously in 4th. Bristol City away, one of the teams, our nearest challenger, in fact, because they're on the same points as us. And then we've got Watford at home, who are just 5 points back at the time of speaking, and then after that it's Coventry away, who are the team directly above us. So we've got a massive 5-game period where we finished the season with 3 teams. I think you could quite strongly make a case for 2 of them will go down. Derby, Cardiff, and Luton are our last 3 games, but this 5-game period against all teams who would say they would have ambitions of finishing in the playoffs, and I think you are still just in that category, it's season defining, really. This 5 games, I've said it before. Our 3 away games are Norwich, Coventry, and Bristol City. If we lose all 3, we will not make the playoffs. I'm certain of that, because not only will we have lost 3 away games and lost 3 games, but we will have given up points to teams who are either chasing us or just ahead of us. And that will be pivotal. That having been said, if we come out of these 3 games having lost none of them, regardless of whether they're 3 draws or not, I'm pretty certain we will make the playoffs. So it's tight. You guys know, because you're looking up the table. You're well aware of how tight it is. It really is. It's so. It's impossible to predict, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, the Championship, always sort of throws up something in the final games of the campaign. Just intrigued to get your take on probably like the draws this season. I mean, looking at the table, 18 draws, I think it is. Is there any kind of concerns that might be an Achilles heel come the end of the campaign? Because, turning those draws into wins is always a crucial part in trying to get in the top 6.
Yeah, I think we've, as you say, we've drawn 18 games this season. Nobody in the league has drawn more than us. I don't think we're a million miles off the record for most Championship draws in a season. I did look it up actually at one point as to what it was. I actually think Birmingham City hold the record, if I remember correctly. But I'm not quite sure how close to it we are. You could look at it. You could look at it like that, Adam. But equally, you could also say we've lost the same number of games as Sunderland, who are 10 points clear of Coventry in 5th. So it kind of depends on how you want to view it. 13 games won is the same as Millwall in 11th. But then 7 games lost is the same as Sunderland in 4th, who are miles clear of 5th. I think you just have to look through and take each draw on its own context, because, as you quite rightly said at the top of the programme, our last 2 away draws have been Leeds and Burnley, and nobody on God's green earth is going to tell you that either of those are bad results. In fact, we've drawn every single game that we've played against the top 4. We've drawn home and away against Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United, and drew away with Sunderland. Again, I'm not having anybody telling me that those are bad results, but then you'll look elsewhere in the season and you'll say, well, you drew at home to Cardiff. That looks like a really bad result. You drew at home to Millwall in a period when they weren't particularly good. We drew at Preston, and that was a poor Preston side at that point in time. You drew away at Swansea in a game that you dominated. You drew at home to a Stoke side, which have later been proven to be incredibly poor. So each draw has to be taken on its context, because I can't sit here and say our draws are bad, because you'd be well within your rights to say you've drawn home and away against Sheffield United, Leeds, Sunderland and Burnley. But then the other side of that coin is, we've drawn to teams that we shouldn't have done. So it's a tricky one. I think it's very easy to pick the bones out of a season at the end of it and be very smart in hindsight. The reality is, we've been very close in most games. Like we're not one of those sides who's got beat out of sight in many matches. We've been competitive in every game, but unfortunately, what we haven't been is loads better than teams in many games either. So most of our games are tight, and a lot of them have ended in a draw. I think the reality is, if we make the playoffs, what you will say is Albion are a side that in no way are particularly dominant, but what they are is extremely hard to beat.
Yeah, we certainly saw that, I think, in the reverse game at the Hawthorns earlier in the season. Obviously, there's been a change of manager since then as well. Carlos Corberán departing to Valencia, Tony Mowbray returning back to management, which is obviously great to see. 2.5-year deal at West Brom. What was kind of that time like, that change of manager? Because obviously Corberán's so highly regarded by anybody who's watched West Brom and the Championship, and clearly a manager who's got a really high ceiling in terms of his career. Tony Mowbray, what changes has he, I suppose, implemented and changed at West Brom, if anything?
Not a lot, really, to be honest with you. Probably not as much as people in the media would like to have you believe. I think they like to. They've massively built this narrative about Albion. Tony Mowbray's Albion is suddenly going to be this free-flowing attacking football, because that's what he was last time. And I think there's a lack of acknowledgement that he is a completely different manager this time around. I think he realizes that there's an element, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, about the defense. But at the same time, we've struggled to create. You look at our recent games, and we've created 1 XG or less in 6 of our last 7 games. And okay, Leeds and Burnley away are in there, but so are home games against Blackburn, Oxford, QPR, which, okay, we had a man sent off on 45 minutes. Hull at home, Millwall away. We haven't been playing world beaters every week, and we haven't really worked out a way to get the best out of Adam Armstrong yet, which is probably the biggest frustration that we have as a club at the moment, because we brought this guy in who I think incredible pedigree at this level, has an unbelievable record of scoring goals, was the top scorer in terms of goal contributions last season, goals plus assists, and we haven't really seen much of him. He scored on his debut. Since then, he scored a penalty. He's had a few chances, but he hasn't really had the service that he. And I imagine a lot of the focus over the last 2 weeks, where we've had this international break from Tony Mowbray, has been, how do we get the best out of Armour? Because I think when we signed him on deadline day, when it was finally ratified 24 hours later, thank you EFL for that stress. I think a lot of Albion fans just rubbed their hands together and went, well, that's that then. We're going to make the playoffs, because there's a very strong argument to say that there's not a better striker in the division. I know you might make that argument. There's a very good one at Carrow Road, and I respect that. But in terms of his record at this level, it's hard to say anybody is, markedly better than Adam Armstrong. But we simply haven't seen that. since he came in, and that's a big frustration, and it's something that if we don't fix it in the next 8 games, we're probably going to look back at the end of this season with a lot of regret that we brought in a guy that really should have fired us over the line and he didn't. But if we've used the last 2 weeks wisely and we see, I don't want to say a different Adam Armstrong, because that would suggest he's the problem, and I don't think he is. I think the problem is that the team hasn't worked out how to play to him yet. But if we see a different approach to serving Adam Armstrong, then I think we could be in for a really exciting end to the season. And also the fact that we haven't been beaten by any of the top 4 this season, Sunderland at home still to play that withholding. I don't necessarily see that if we do get into the playoffs, that we've necessarily got that much to fear, because nobody's turned us over.
Indeed, yeah. You mentioned Adam Armstrong, obviously the other striker who was banging in the goals in the first half of the season, Josh Maja, who I believe has been out injured for quite a period of time. How big a blow has it been missing him? Because obviously 12 goals, it's kind of been between him and Borja Sainz for the top goal scorer in the Championship at one point when we spoke earlier in the season. So I suppose in those January editions, I know you brought in Lancashire as well, and there's a lad from overseas as well. Maybe nobody's quite managed to kind of match that goal tally that he got in the first part of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think, look, in terms of answering your original question, it's the injury to Josh Maja has been season defining. I think if I'm not sure necessarily everybody realised it at the time. I'm not, and I include myself in that. I'm not sure. I always thought Josh Maja was an outstanding player, but I didn't quite. I don't think I realised, and I don't think many others realised quite how integral to everything he was, because it's not just losing Josh Maja. And you can talk about the goals, and that's completely valid, but it was more than that. Tom Fellows was the top assister in the division. In fact, I think he still is, or he's level. He's level with Finn Azaz. But Tom Fellows has barely had another assist since Josh Maja got injured. You know, that Fellows to Maja was just an unbelievable combination, and we've had that taken away from us. Karlan Grant was striking up an unbelievable striking partnership with Josh Maja. Karlan Grant has fallen out of the team and can barely get a sniff these days, because when he does play, he's completely anonymous without Josh Maja. It's not just losing him. It's not just losing his goals. He was this incredible link player, because most of the work he did was coming deep, and he just knit the whole thing together. And it's like a flipping game of Kaplunk where you pull the wrong one out and all the marbles come thundering down. It's like that's what it's been like taking Josh Maja out the side. And I don't think any of us quite realised how massive that impact was going to be, but it really has. And we hope to see him back very, very soon, but unfortunately it won't be at Carrow Road this weekend. Mowbray's already confirmed that it's going to come a little bit too soon, but he hopes that the start of April Maja will be back. And we Norwich away is a big game for us. So is Sunderland at home, but really the monster games are Bristol City and Coventry, and we desperately need him back for those two.
Yeah, obviously turning the attention a little bit forward to Saturday's game. Who's maybe the danger man to pick out and look out for on Saturday? I know, obviously, you sort of mentioned there Maja's unavailability, which is obviously a huge blow, and the likes of Armstrong, who I think down the years you would naturally be saying, he's the key player for this game, maybe not hitting those levels at the moment. Tom Fellows, obviously, as you mentioned, top assister in the league. I think Noah's having a pretty good campaign in the middle of the park. So who would you maybe pinpoint as the one to watch?
The man of the moment is Isaac Price. By a mile, but it just depends where he plays, because he had to play blooming right back in the last game because we had no fullbacks. Now I'm hoping that Callum Styles is going to be back fit and firing, which means Hegem can go back to centre half and Holgate can go across to right back, because obviously Darnell Furlong still has a game to serve on his red card for brushing gently up against a QPR player who went to the ground like he'd been shot. But less of that. CJ Egan Riley got his overturned. Furlong didn't. Let's make of that what you will. But if he can go back into midfield Isaac Price has been unbelievable. He scored 2 for Northern Ireland while he was away on international duty. He has come in from Standard Liège, and it's just been an utterly seamless transition. He is a ridiculous footballer, and I don't know how we got him as cheaply as we did. I can't believe there wasn't more people lining up to take him. The guy just looks like a Premier League footballer in waiting, and whether it's with us or whether it's with somebody else, I'd like to think he won't go anywhere in the summer, but I would be gobsmacked if by the start of the sort of 26-27 season he wasn't wearing Premier League colours. He is an absolutely unbelievable player. Beyond that, Mikey Johnston is always a massive threat on the left-hand side. He beats players for fun. He's got more successful dribbles than anybody else in the division, and he would terrorise any fullback in the league. But that having been said, and this has been highlighted by a number of Albion fans, his end product probably does need to be better, and he hasn't scored the goals that he scored last season. So he will be a threat, but whether there's product at the end of it, that remains to be seen a little bit.
Yeah, before I get your thoughts on Norwich, just intrigued to get your take on the reverse game. Obviously a 2-2 draw. I think there was that crazy stat prior to that game that West Brom had only seen 3 goals at the Hawthorns in the first 7, and then suddenly 4 goals came in 45 minutes. So what's your take on that game, I suppose, and that state of play at that point in time? Because I think West Brom and Norwich were both on a pretty poor run of form.
Yeah. I mean, it was well. Again, I suppose it depends. It depends how you view our draws, isn't it? We were on a run of a lot of draws. But that being said, we had just broken the run of draws with a 2-1 win at Hull. So I think we actually went into the game with an awful lot of good feeling about it, and. It was a funny game, as you say, because we'd kind of got this reputation for being a little bit stale, a little bit dour at times in that season, and suddenly crash bang wallop, we saw 4 goals inside the inside the first half, and to be honest, it was as soon as we scored, you equalised, and as soon as you went ahead, we equalised. I did think in the second half, I thought we were very much the better side, to be honest with you. I thought we had a lot of opportunities that we didn't really make the most of. You came on a little bit stronger towards the end of the game, and Sainz started to influence things a little bit more. But the first half was absolutely back and forth, and it was a crazy game of football. But I thought on the basis of the second half, we were the better team, and probably were justified in feeling a little bit hard done to that we only came away with a point. But then I suppose the flip side of that particular coin is that you would look at it as a very good away performance, and you probably wouldn't be expecting to match our 22 shots at home. So I thought it was a good game of football. I thought we were probably just about the better team, but I also wouldn't argue with anybody who said on that particular day that Borja Sainz was the best player on the park, and he's one that I will be very nervous about going into this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned Borja Sainz there. I'm just intrigued to get your take on Norwich's season from afar. Obviously, whether you see much of us, kind of feels like certainly from most Canary quarters that this season's kind of done and dusted, and it's going to be another season in the Championship, going to miss out on playoffs. But what have you made of us, from somebody on the outside?
You're absolutely balmy, to be honest with you. I've watched you a couple of times in recent weeks, away at Bristol City and at home to Oxford. Absolutely dominate both of those games and create chance after chance after chance, and just have no way of getting through, and then just letting really soft goals in at the other end. Like the one for Naki Wells against Bristol City was criminal. To let a guy like that just turn unchallenged in the penalty area. It's a weird one, because you kind of don't look far off, in the sense that you're doing a lot of things right. You're creating a lot of chances. You're just not taking them. I mean, on the balance of chances against Bristol City, you should never have come out second best. And on the balance of chances against Oxford, there's no way you shouldn't have won that game. But you're just not doing the fundamentals right. It's little things like as I say, just not getting tight to somebody in the penalty area, not dealing with a long throw into the box and a second ball. These are basics, and I don't know enough about Norwich to know what it is, what the reason is, whether you haven't got the right mentality within the squad, whether you've got players who've played a bit too much, or disruption due to injury. I don't know enough about Norwich to know the real answer. If I was guessing, I would say it's a mentality issue, that you haven't got players who want to defend enough, and haven't got players who when the games are going a little bit against them in terms of results, can't get their head right and actually just shut out the sort of negativity and deal with it. But yeah, it seems like all the talent and all the ability is there, because you're ripping teams apart. It's just the end product has been lacking, which kind of makes me think that, which makes me worry for this weekend, because when you see a team doing that, bossing games week after week, but coming out on the wrong side of results, you kind of feel like they're just going to absolutely pump someone at some point. And I do look at Norwich, and I think at some point somebody is going to catch a hiding from you. It's just whether it happens too late for your season, to be honest with you. The reality is, I think if you, as much as many Norwich fans will say we're done, don't care what this West Brom fan says, we're done. If you beat the team in sixth this weekend and go to within 5 points of us, you are with 7 games to play, you are not out of this. But this is your last chance saloon. There's no 2 ways about it, because if we maintain an 8-point gap with seven games to go, or potentially even take that to 11 points, there's no way you're not clawing that back. So, this is it for your season. But I'm sure Norwich fans will be really, really annoyed at the way the results you've had. But looking at it from a sort of having watched 2 out of your last 3 games as a neutral, what I would say is that you're not far away. You're creating a lot of chances, and if you can stamp out the really ludicrous mistakes and the lazy defending, then you're a good team. You've got a ton of talent. It's just, has your manager been able to use the time over the international break to really drum some discipline into his defenders, get a good mentality out of his attackers, so that they don't pass up chance after chance?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed our season in a nutshell there. Just very frustrating, and one that could have been so different had certain things gone in a different way. Just quickly before I get your score predictions, just a player I wanted to ask you a little bit about, obviously was on West Brom's books at the start of the campaign, arrived at Norwich in January, Lewis Dobbin on loan. No goals in 18 appearances. I think most of those off the bench, just 1 league start for West Brom, 1 in the Cup, but 2 goals for Norwich in 10 league appearances. The Norwich fans absolutely love him, hoping that he's going to be returning next season. So just intrigued to kind of get what happened and what went wrong from afar, because sometimes players just don't fit clubs or situations or whatever. So what was kind of his time at the Hawthorns like?
What went wrong? We signed Mikey Johnston. That's it, really, for me. We signed Mikey Johnston. Carlin Grant started the season like a house on fire. So did Tom Fellows. That you couldn't dislodge either of those 2. And then the next cab off the rank was very much Mikey Johnston when one of those did drop out. I don't think anybody at the club thought we had a cat in hell's chance of signing Mikey Johnston at the point at which we brought in Lewis Dobbin. And if we hadn't, we would have really needed Lewis much more than we did. But unfortunately for Lewis, his time on the field was massively limited. I thought he played better than a lot of Albion fans gave him credit for. He was always going to struggle because of who he was on loan from, even though he has never kicked a ball in anger for Aston Villa. It's always going to go against you. It's like if you guys borrowed a player off Ipswich, then doesn't matter who they are, how good they are. It's gonna take a lot of convincing of the fan base. And yeah, when we borrow players from Villa, or even sign players who've previously played for Villa, it's not easy. It's not easy for them. And the same when we sign players from Wolves. And I think I honestly think unless they're an absolutely unreal signing, we probably need to think twice before doing it in the future, because I thought people were looking for an excuse to have a go at Dobbin and say he was terrible. Some people, anyway. There's obviously more sort of reasonable fans out there, but I think a certain section of our support were very happy to get on his back. Certainly, some of the more vociferous people on social media. And I thought he got a raw deal. And I thought when he was coming on, what little he was being given a chance to show, I thought he was doing all right. He was driving forward. He was beating players. Okay, he wasn't doing a great deal, but then he wasn't being given a great deal of minutes. There's a question of what on earth can we possibly expect from a player who got a total of 340 minutes across and spread across 17 games. Those 340 minutes were. So that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. That I'm just doing the maths now. Yeah, that's an average of 20 minutes per game. So what can you expect from a guy who's just getting the back end of games? I thought he got a raw deal. I'm actually quite as long as it doesn't cost us, I'm quite pleased to see him doing quite nicely at Norwich. But yeah, we probably shouldn't really be signing players from Villa unless it's a signing we absolutely can't turn down, because it's a problem that we've had before. And equally, he didn't when he said yes to coming to the club on loan, he didn't realise we were going to sign Mikey Johnston. And I think if he'd known that, he wouldn't have come. And if we'd known that, we wouldn't have signed him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be gutted to be missing the game through a long-term injury on Saturday. With that and everything we've spoken around in the show, I'm going to push you for a prediction, Chris. How do you see this game unfolding?
Like I say, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I think it will massively come down to who gets the first goal, to be honest with you, because I think if you get the first goal, you'll get your tails up. And as I say, I do worry that there's a hiding coming from someone, but I'm never ever going to go on an opposition pod and predict Albion to get spanked or anything silly like that. And we are the draw masters of the Championship. And frankly, I would absolutely rip your hand off for a point this weekend, because I think it. As I say, I'd rip your hand off for 3 draws from Norwich, Bristol City, and Coventry away. I would be really, really, really happy with that. Forget this thing of but if you win one, draw one, lose one, you've got more points. I don't think we can afford to lose to any of those teams. So yeah, I'm going to go with a draw. Let's call it a repeat of what happened at the Hawthorns, another 2-2, and. I'll go home very happy. You lot probably less so, probably with your season over, if that is the result.
Yeah, we'll see what we get. And just finally, Chris, I want to plug where people can find your guys' content.
Absolutely. Albion Analysis, we're available on all your podcasting platforms, usual places, Spotify, Apple, etc., etc. We don't do a preview podcast, but if you do want to hear our views on the game after it's happened, we obviously will do a review podcast, probably sometime around Sunday. Assuming Mother's Day duties don't overly take precedence. But there'll be that, and there's content on our Substack if you want to go and find it. Albion Analysis on Substack. If you just Google that or search Albion Analysis on Substack, and there's going to be an article from Adam himself on there talking about how he views Norwich ahead of this weekend in our opposition view feature. So go on and check that out if you want to see what Adam said.
Excellent stuff. We'll link all that good stuff down below. Chris, do really appreciate your time this afternoon. Looking forward to the game, of course, on Saturday afternoon. All the updates will be across our channels heading into this game. We'll be down at Colney speaking to Johannes tomorrow lunchtime. So we'll find out all the team news, who's going to be available and who's not. Hopefully Angus come back between the sticks. Of course, that will be a huge boost if Norwich are going to get anything out of this game. Of course, we'll see you on Saturday at Carrow Road. Thanks for joining us.